It's 3:30 at night. I need to go for a wee. Of course I was really tired, I was barely awake. And as a result, my memories aren't particularly lucid, but they are vivid. This is what happened, at least as I recall it. As I gathered myself, my eye caught sight of a figure climbing the stairs. I thought it was my dad. And I said, "Oh, hello Dad." And the figure climbed up the stairs, but it didn't reply to me. And then all of a sudden, he turned to look at me. And I thought it was a burglar. So I panicked, turned away and to find the light switch. And when I turned back, the ghost was gone and the figure was gone and I was all by myself. And that actually happened to me. That's bizarre, isn't it? That's like a proper ghost story. Freaked the shit out of me. I didn't go for a pee, obviously, because the ghost was standing right next to the toilet. I still remember the ghost story incredibly vividly. I mean, like the effect that this book's had on my own personal memories is quite profound. It has like undermined my faith in certain things. I don't believe it was actually a ghost. I don't think it was like the spirit of a dead person. But it definitely happened to me. But like our brains are really big and they're more than capable of conjuring up images that are inexplicable to ourselves, if not to science. So it was really weird. And I've had other things like that happen to me. When Hannah was pregnant with Polly, my first child, I woke up in the middle of the night and there was this child standing next to the bed. It was this bedroom. This room was our bedroom at the time. And I can't believe I'm telling you this, actually. It's a bizarre thing to be telling you, but never mind. And I looked at this child and I thought to myself, like through half sleepy haze, I thought to myself, oh look, there's my child. And then instantly that thought was followed by this terrified reaction, thinking, my kid's not born yet, so that is something really bizarre standing there next to me. So I turned away from it, but I could still sort of feel it looking at me. It was a really bizarre feeling. And when I woke up in the morning, I thought, right, I'm going to make a comic about that because I want to record it so that when the baby's born, I can show it to the baby. I can show it to my baby. And so I drew it. And obviously, when my child was born, she was a she. And this makes me sound really crazy. I don't actually believe in anything supernatural. But this is like something that my brain conjured up. But I drew it down, and the thing I like about ghost stories and stuff like that is that I don't think that things are ultimately inexplicable, but I do think that there are things that are mysterious and weird. And I think ghost stories highlight the weirdness in life is pretty weird, isn't it? Consciousness is pretty weird. The type of consciousness we have, that gives us the room to think about things other than food and sex and stuff. This book is almost like a ghost because you're making a version of the past which is apparently real but really not, and it's like a I can't explain it. So I absolutely love comics, and I'm a bit obsessed with them, to say the least. I got my first comic when I was 10 years old. It was my mum bought it for me from this place called Dave's Comic Shop, which still exists in the North Lane in Brighton, in order to help me tolerate going to the dentist. There are many, many comics in this house. There were so many amazing comics coming out in the 80s, and there was this big explosion in this country of people, adults, thinking, oh yeah, we can get into comics. That was a comic. It's one of the original comics that I bought. But in the 90s, it just became really crap. And I carried on buying comics, but I sort of lost faith in them. So when it came for me to go to college, I ended up getting into fine art. At the end of my postgraduate degree, I was sent, weirdly enough, by the college on this research program to Japan. And I'd already started sort of dipping my toe back in the waters of comics, but Japan just blew my brain away. It's a very visual culture, and there are loads of amazing comics. And I came home from Japan thinking that's what I really want to do. But I carried on sort of making my sculptures and my videos, and it was only when my wife became pregnant that I thought to myself, right, I really need to just commit myself to comics. And so I started writing what is now my first book. The first book I wrote, I was writing it about, it ended up being about this my grandmother dying. But what's weird about it is that it's really hard to sort of sum it up, but because writing a story, you can't just, it's not the same as, I started off by just drawing memories, okay? So the first memory I drew was this, it's a big event in my family's story. It was the day our dog Becky pooed on the rug in the front room. The dog belonged to my mum's mum, and Dad confronted my grandma and said, look, you've got to clean that up because it's your dog and I don't want to be involved. My grandma was like, that's not Becky's poo. That's someone else's poo. That looks like human poo. And so my dad was like, whose poo is it? And so my grandma said, it must be one of the children. By this point, we were like 10 years old. The children wouldn't poo on the rug. It's the dog's poo. Of course it is. Clean it up. And so she cleaned it up, but she claimed that it was a robber's poo, that someone had broken into the house, pooed on the rug, not taken anything, and left, leaving no trace other than poo. And as far as I know, she stands by that story. And this is the same chapter where Grandma's tidying up the poo. She's going, grumble, far too big to be Becky's, grumble, grumble. Someone must have broken in, grumble. And then my dad is called away by my grandma to answer the telephone. And when he came back, he was walking down the hallway. I thought he was laughing, but he was like bawling his eyes out because his dad was dead. It's the first time I've ever seen my dad cry. And I remember that image of my dad walking towards us, crying, because it was such a startling image. I remember it so clearly, and it's in the book. I've put it in the book. And in the initial draft of the book, it was Granddad that had died, but in order to make the narrative work, I had to get Granddad out of the book as a character, and so I kept that scene, but it was, the book is framed around my grandma dying, my dad's mum dying. And so I kept that scene, and I had him crying about the death of his mum. And it just felt a very strange thing. It was the first choice I made in rewriting the book to make it work. And it was a hard choice. It felt like I was divorcing myself and the book from the truth. But of course, what matters about that scene isn't that Dad is crying about his dad or his mum. It's that Dad is crying because he's lost a parent. Although the book no longer contains necessarily exactly what happened on one given day of my childhood, it contains a deeper truth about what my childhood was like. I feel, maybe. Writing a book isn't, you can't just retell a memory. You have to reconstruct it. You have to sort of build it up from the basic event that's inspired it. It's much more like basket weaving. You've got this series of memories and you've got to interlock them in a way which is not just interesting but satisfying for the reader, but also satisfying for yourself. And the weird thing is that having written that book, now I find it really difficult to unknot what actually happened. I mean, even on did that event take place on that day or in that space, as I've said it does in the book? I can't remember. a photograph of an event, you know, that can become a memory of something that you never actually remembered. You know, we're constantly inventing our lives, our personal histories. You know, we edit the past and our memories, and we tell ourselves versions. There's me. That place is literally down the road. There's me as a 2-year-old with a lollipop that looks like poison. Look at the colours in that lollipop. I love that picture of my granddad, because there's lots of sort of dignified pictures of granddad, but he's completely wasted there. I remember that house so well. I feel like I can sort of close my eyes and do a little tour of it. I don't know whether the tour is accurate or not, but it feels right. Looking at these images doesn't reinforce that feeling. The feeling is there already. So I don't feel particularly bound to these pictures. I like seeing the pictures of my family, but I don't feel that they are especially significant. But if I take a photograph, it's almost like I outsource the responsibility for the memory to the mechanism of photography. So I don't need to worry about. I don't need to take responsibility for being present. Because you want to live, don't you? You don't want to just be passive in your life. You want to be present and engaged with what's around you. But the problem with that is it's really hard work.